Okay, we're going to do one here on mythology and symbolism and one of the symbols of it. And this word that we have here, Putto, or Putto, and it's got something to do with putt, almost like golf, or foot, like the land that was Egypt for a while, foot, and putt because putty is the plural name of it. It's an Italian word, but it's one that goes back a long ways, and we'll get into this here a little bit. Um, well, Italian being a Latin form of the words, so it's something that we actually do have connections to in some way, and it's believed that the putter, whenever that's the little bitty club that hits real softly, and this is the baby club. This is the little cherubim type thing, and that's what these signify right here. I don't know if you can really see it in the picture. I'm sorry, but if I do click on it, it will go to a different channel. So we know what little cherubim and little winged little guys. So let's talk about this. It says, Putti or Putto is a figure in a work of art depicted as a chubby male child, usually naked and sometimes winged. Originally limited to profane passions and symbolism, the Putto came to represent the sacred cherub, plural or cherubs, now are cherubim, and if they're sacred in any way or whatever. So, in the Baroque period of art, the Putto came to represent the omnipresence of God, like whenever God sent His angels, right? And so it had something to do with that type of effect. A Putto representing a Cupid is also called an Amarino, or if there's a group like in the picture up there, it's Amarini. Now, amor is love, right? And we know these things as Cupid today. It's a Valentine symbol, but it's a symbol of love. And it's a symbol of 1 month before pretty much springtime comes into effect. And so it's kind of a rites of spring situation before spring. And where coming out of Christmas, we get another holiday, of course, right in there. But it has a lot of weird symbolism with it that goes with it. These cherubim that you see and what we know today is always these little fairies, right? These little floating around little naked babies, and they're kind of fairies. In fact, a lot of these were called fairies. You wonder where the story fairies come from, and it's the little people, and they were like this, and they floated around, and they caused fertility on things, and they would go from flower to flower, and they're little bitty, and you try to explain them to people, and they wouldn't know what you're talking about, but you're talking about butterflies. You're literally describing butterflies in a passionate way, and people, they take it out of confusion and mix it with this idea, and you can see that happening. And now fair, F-A-E-R, and fae is for someone to be light, to be pale, to be blonde and blue-eyed, to be fair-skinned, to be, Scandinavian, whatever you want to say, Swedish. Okay, so fae, or in Dungeons and Dragons, fae touched is a thing that gives you an extra power. It has to do with the elves, and all this fae and fairy things has to do with elves, right? And funny that elves has L in it, right? But elves, and it's the rootage of 11, by the way. And who was the 11th tribe? Well, we're going to skip that. We're just talking about cherubs here, but I've already gone off in left field here. These elves, when they die, they are said to, where they're buried, they create a yew tree. And that these yew trees grow up. Now, yew trees are what was used to make the long bows and the curved and recurved bows that really had a lot more thump on them. And of course, that's a composite thing that they had together, and it gave you a whole lot more thump. I don't know if you see any of the old things, but people were really having to get up 10, 15 foot from each other and try to thump things into each other, and even closer. They'd run up literally just almost like they had a weapon, and they would just thump it into people. And, you wear a couple of pieces of leather on, and of course, sure, that's only as strong as a hide of the animal that you did. Can you go up and thump one into a cow and stuff? How good of a wound can you get? What if he has 2 or 3 plates of it on there? If you got to hit him in the right spot, and under the arm's a great spot. Wasn't that for Nimrod? Anyhow, I've digressed quite a bit here. But this fresco here, too, let me keep going. This fresco here is Venditrice Dio Marini. It's a fresco from the Villa of Ariana. And so that name is a conglomerate. And it shows you something. There is Ariana as a name, and we know it today. And, of course, there's Anna. Now, Anna is beloved of An, and An was the Sumerian god. And whenever you see that name, Anna, or Inanna, which would make her just deified, like a lord or a goddess, the goddess Anna. And so when you see those names like Anna and Anika, and that flavor of names, it comes from roots like this, but I digressed again. But also Diana. In Greeks and stuff, whenever you deify somebody, you put di on the front of it a lot of times, and Dios is the names of like a god. And so if you're deifying Anna, you would put it as Diana. This is Venus, the morning star. Anyhow, so here we have these cherubs and stuff, but what's weird about the cherubs is they used to be something totally different. Now, the cherubim, let's just continue here, though. You'll find them on sarcophaguses and all over the place. And I tell you, like the picture that lady had there was a period of time in the Dark Ages where if they found you with something like that, even though that's supposed to be angels and all that, your grandma was a witch, and they try to take your stuff, and all kinds of things happened. I guess that's a different video too. Let me continue. So here you can see all these cherubim. They're usually playing around, doing sports, doing something. The more commonly found form putti is the plural of the Italian word putto. The Italian word comes from the Latin word putus, meaning boy or child. Today in Italian, putto means either toddler winged angel or rarely toddler boy. It may have been derived from the same Indo-European roots as the Sanskrit word putra, meaning boy child as opposed to son. No people. Okay, but Evestran Pura, Old Persian Puka, and Pus, and Pusar also meaning son, and the New Persian Pesar, boy or son. And I'm telling you, that's not where that comes from, and that's not even root working correctly there. This guy's not, no, he doesn't know anything about linguistics. Let me show you something. So, Putto means bad word. And that's just in Spanish and in Latin. And it's kind of so it's a male. Now, if I put the A on the end of it and make it a female, females becomes a prostitute or a whore or somebody that, she's all whorish or whatever. Well, so the differential there is that a male is a gigolo, right? So again, even though now it's turned into this incredibly bad slang that's going on, what we're really talking about is a fertility symbol. And this god of love, hey, I'm the god of love, right? I'm Eros, the god of love, Cupid, right? Eros and Amor, Eros, right? So let's go back. So, and of course they're changing words like puss and things in here and stuff, and you don't get it. And pesar supposedly has to do with a male part and things like that. So there's these words, and of course we have the uni and things in Sanskrit in India, and that's a little bit, different, but it comes from these exact same roots too in linguistics. It actually does, because there's a bunch of different slangs to go with sex words and things like that, and that's where that comes from. So, and I keep thinking these things that I can't tell you right now, so let me just go on. Putto in the ancient classical world of art were winged infants that were believed to influence human lives, like an angel comes and helps you, whatever. In Renaissance art, the form of the putti was derived in various ways, including the Greek eros, or Roman amor, or Cupid, the god of love, and the companion of Aphrodite, or Venus, right? Now, there's also the Amorites, if you know about that, and Aphrodite is known to have come from the edge of the Mediterranean, and she came out of the sea, and the seashell, and everything. So, anyhow, the Roman genius, a type of guardian spirit, or sometimes the Greek daemon, a type of messenger spirit, being halfway between the realms of the human and the divine, like a messenger, like Mercury, the messenger, and quickly you get the message and things like that, and things seem to just happen out of normal, and they blame it on these things. And of course, there's good messengers and bad messengers, and genius is wisdom comes to you. And the other one, demon, well, something bad can happen, and omen, all these things. Does it necessarily be bad for you? Not so much. But you can see how somebody could weave that right into there, in saying that there's angels and there's demons, and there they are on that little box, right? Later. Well, let me take you back to just before this. These cherubim, I've made videos about them recently. I don't know how long y'all been with me, but these lamasu and these cherubim that they have, that's what they're called, in front of temples, on the anthropomorphic winged creatures that are on the top of the Ark of the Covenant, that were in front of the temples that they talked about, that are all through Syria, all the way down through Sumeria. There are these guardians of the gate that have the symbols on them, and it's really an X, or a north-south, east-west, if you will, but flattened on the earth like a compass, of the zodiac in the ancient times. And where you get the wing from is something that no longer exists, and it's the scorpion, because that interchanged. It changed out, and that bird there used to be extremely important. That bird was the one that was for taking people up into the sky. In ancient caveman times, they would put people out on a dais and let the birds eat them and take them to heaven. And this is the starting of the idea of the winged and take you to heaven, an idea. And then later Inanna is shown with wings, bringing forth this first angelic idea. And then the story goes on her that she eventually died after Dumuzi and the things that happened. And therefore, you had to go up to heaven to go see her, because she was that creature, and she was wise as an owl now, and everything, and all the symbolism that goes with that. Anyhow, I digressed about 6 times now, but I continue. Putti are a classical motif found primarily on child sarcophagi of the 2nd century, when they're depicted fighting, dancing, participating in Bacchic rites, playing in sports and stuff. And the actual idea of showing him as the little baby here, and a perpetual baby, is a Bacchus rites, where it's like a reborn type thing. And so you can see that this reborn or resurrection situation shown onto somebody that has a temple, right? And of themselves, that this really is kind of a sarcophagus 2.0, maybe about 3.0 right here, right? Anyhow, so and our Adonis is rights and things like that, and this goes back to Tammuz and Dumuzi, and here we go back into the same origin pull-out parts, and you mix some Egyptian with it, and yeah, and the Mediterranean, it's all there, it's all there. The Putto disappeared during the Middle Ages. Ooh, I wonder why. I guess I told you. And was revived during the Quattrocento. A rival of the figure of Puttos is generally attributed to Donatello in Florence in the 1420s. But there was about a 600 or 700 year period there that was real bad. And the end of it was real bad about it. And then they said, no, no, no. And then they finally went for that idea again of the Christian idea of adopting that in and going, well, these are cherubim now. And it's like, wow, because the cherubim are vicious creatures in the Garden of Eden, and they have swords and all this stuff. It's not, that's not what this is. This is, they're guardians, they're sentinels. It's literally what it is. It's like oracle sentinels that you cannot get past and stuff, and things like that, that they're the guardians of the gate of the gods. And, you know, ooh, so, but no, now they're turned into little winged baby things, which actually were in the middle part of that, a symbolism having to go with Bacchus. So now we're just going to pull all these three things together and just go with it. And now we have baby angels running around and shooting little bows and arrows and making people fall in love. And it really has an origin in these Amor. And, well, Amorites had something to do with it too. But of course, it really has to do with these babies. And the idea here, let me just pause and go back up. Looking at this original thing here, now here's a concept that they believed, kind of a divining witch situation, okay, if you will. This thing was, if a lady was barren, i.e. this lady here was barren, you could bring little babies around here, and because of a mother's emotions and hearing a baby cry and things like that, it could rustle up a few eggs again and try to get her back going. They even went to the point of sometimes having the woman breastfeed or attempt to breastfeed off of her, or the baby would try to breastfeed off of her, and maybe that would kick in something. There's a few other techniques can't talk about and stuff, but anyhow, they tried all kinds of things, and some of these things actually work. Mandrake and so on, which is written in the Bible in the story of Leah and Rachel and trying to have more kids when they became barren, has some truth to it. That was known as a love apple, and that might have a little bit more to do with the Garden of Eden than we want to allude to or talk about right now, but we go on and digress. The Putto disappeared during those Middle Ages, right? And so you can see times, though, that it's still was around tombs really just after that. Since then, Donatello has been called the originator of the Putto because of the contribution to art he made in restoring the classical form of Puttos and putting them actually in artwork after the fact and getting them back going. And of course, Donatello got famous. He gave Putto a distinct character by infusing the form with Christian meanings and using it in the new context, such as musician angels and things like that. And you old cathedrals, you look at these and you find them, and you've got them all around and stuff. And no, that's weird, because that's a strange fertility right thing. That's right. Hey, and you know, you bring those out maybe right at Easter, or what are we supposed to do here? Anyhow, Putto also began to feature in works showing figures from classical mythology, which became popular in the same period, and re-looking back at the classics. And so by that blending, almost gave you the idea that it always meant the same thing and not something slightly different just not long before. Most Renaissance Puttae are essentially decorative, and they're ornamental, both religious and secular works, without usually taking any actual part in the events depicted in the narrative paintings. Sometimes it's just the joy of kids, or showing you that this place is fertile, that it has a lot going on, that these kids do things. You look at an example of this Victorian here, and it's showing you kids, and I think that's a sheep, and you know, bags of grain and stuff, and things they're doing. Not too much older than this. They're going to have to really start working a little harder, and they surely had things to do at this ages and stuff too, but they're younglings, if you will. Younglings, right? Two popular forms of the Putto and the main subject of work art in the 16th centuries or Italian Renaissance are the sleeping Putto and the standing Putto with an animal or another object. And you do see them in that way, and quite often they're not winged anymore right there. And then you have to learn about how an angel gets his wings, and then we have stories about that, and ding, 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 and you ring the bell. And then again, whose bell? Whose ball? And who had the big bell? And where does that come from? In the chapels and stuff, and ding, and the ringing of the church bells to call people to prayer and things and stuff. But I digress. I mean, I could make one of these videos and I'll go so far off in left, people. I'll be way out in left field, up in the cheap seat so far I won't even know I'm at a baseball game anymore if I let myself. But let's continue here. Cupids and angels, which we look at below, can be found in both religious and secular art from the 1420s in Italy, the turn of the 16th century in the Netherlands and Germany, Mannerist period in the Renaissance in France, all through the Baroque ceiling frescoes. So many artists have depicted them that a list would be pointless. But among the best known are the sculptor Donatello, Raphael, and we start to get all of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles doing it. The two relaxed and curious Putto who appear at the foot of Raphael's Sistine Madonna are often reproduced over and over again. People have made those into like little sconces and all kinds of things. They're also experienced a major revival in the 19th century where they gamboled through paintings by French academic painters like Gustave Doré's illustrations for Orlando Furioso 2 advertisements for Orlando Furioso 2, or didn't quite word that right, guys, I guess. It surely didn't roll well. The iconography of Putto is deliberately unfixed, so that it is difficult to tell the difference between Putto, cupids, and various forms of angels. They have no unique, immediately identifiable separate attributes, so that Putto may be many meanings in the roles of the context of art. Some more common associations are associations with Aphrodite, and so with romantic or erotic or with love, right? And then of course Venus or Inanna was a god of love, but she also became a god of war, right? A goddess of war. But then also you have associations with heaven and the idea of children, associations with peace, prosperity, mirth, and leisure. Quite often you'll see them in depictions with this tree of life and so on, right? And kids that are there. And I tell you too now that one of these concepts they used to have was that the children that had to have been sacrificed back in the day to the gods that asked for it would be in this ethereal form, and they would come back and help you because now they had wisdom that they never knew because they were innocent when it had all happened, and that these were the ones and they were going to be your guardian angels. And perhaps whenever they get to ring a bell, then you get to become pregnant with them again in a separate essence as a rebirth, and here we go again. Although it may be a girl instead of a boy and all these things that may have happened, but that's another totally different symbolic thing. But anyhow, Putto in popular culture. Putto is the main character in the 2010 webcomic Sorrowful Putto of Prague. Oh, they're telling you what they are in culture. Also used as a decorative art, found on buildings, gardens, and greeting cards as a purveyor of love. We have the Valentine's Day, as I talked about. A Putto smoking a cigarette serves as the cover of Van Halen's album 1984. Yeah, it's a Cupid, and he's sitting there with like cards, I think, and smoking a cigarette, kind of leaned up, like, man, I'm tired of this gig. There's one adorning the main characters of the wedding cake in Gustave Flaubert's novel Madame Bovary. Putto is the protagonist of the 2000 third-person shooter Messiah. I didn't know there was a game like that, but I'm guessing this is a game where it's a shooter and you're a Messiah. Well, what are you going around killing the devil and stuff? Anyhow, in the British TV series Doctor Who, infants of the species Weeping Angels appear as the Putto, or putty. In the so you know, putty, there's soft as putty, and then you think about putty, and putty is like clay, right? And clay that you mold around things, and putty we use still today to go around pipes and things like that. They use a special stuff and put it in there, and when you make the putty around pipes, which they call buki now, it ends up making it fireproof and stuff, right? But so then, you know, God molds people out of clay, and they do things. Anyhow, it's just it still just keeps showing up in just little breaths and things that you see sometimes. And if you know the whole thing here to it, it just kind of like. In the 2003 video game Drakengard, a group of malevolent godlike figures known as the Watchers appear as Putto. That's weird. Okay, historiography on this subject matter is very short. Many art historians have commented on the importance of the Putto in art, but few have undertaken a major study. One useful scholarly examination is Charles Dempsey's inventing of the Renaissance Putto. There's also a few other that talk about angels and cherubs in ancient art and stuff, and some of these symbolism books. Of course, they can take you out in left field real quick too. You know, next thing you know, they've got you telling you that it's space babies and stuff like that, but it really had nothing to do with that. It's in its origin, and this probably goes back to caveman times, that the children were kept with the women. So there was these rites and rituals of becoming a woman, and once you started your menses and stuff, then you would have to be kept in a group that would pretty much sync their menses up, and it had to go with the moon. And here we go with developing a calendar, and there's many that believe that that's what started our ability to count a calendar. We figured out how many of those are going on, and of course we knew how many moons there are between births. It's, you know, it's about 9 and a skosh, and here we go. But yeah, so just showing you that here because I'm going to mention it here in another video coming up, and there's a lot to it. And sometimes whenever I'm talking to you and are just explaining this out, I'll get to a point and it'll say a word, just like earlier I was telling you. There's a lot of things I could say right now, but I can't. And whenever I read through the other article, I got to that point and I'm like, man, just on one word I could probably go with a whole video. And I clicked on the word and bam, and I'm like, man, I could go off on this guy's thing. So I'm gonna, and I did. Anyhow, like, share, and subscribe, guys, and there'll be another one coming up shortly. Peace.